them in about 2 days, which is fine. We're just going to do a quick overview of it, and this will help lead into the American Civil War. So there was a period of time right before the Indian Removal Act, before Andrew Jackson, and right before the American Civil War that a lot of stuff was happening within the society of the United States. There were a lot of different changes, whether they be health changes, whether it be temperance movement, suffragettes, abolitionists. A lot of stuff is going on that's going to lead to a push for a major change and an end to slavery. So slavery has been an issue for since the United States has begun. Um, but we are going to actually focus on the certain people that brought the issue of slavery to light and other things that you don't really think of today. So at the beginning of the year, we talked about the First Great Awakening. Now we have the Second Great Awakening. It's based on the exact same thing. The idea is that Americans have gotten too comfortable. They have strayed away from the church, and now they actually are trying to get people to come back to the church. And when people come back to the church is when they start having these reforming ideas about how they can improve their society, about how they can improve nature, how they can follow the Bible. One of these ways is going to be getting rid of slavery. Another way is going to be stopping their husbands from drinking. Things like this. These are the things that once they're in the church, they start getting these ideas and they start working together. So it's all about improving their society once the Second Great Awakening um, catches hold. One of the first people is actually Lyman Beecher. He's a big name in the Age of Reform or the Reform movement. He, if you notice, established the American Society for the Promotion of Temperance. I know you can read temperance just being that no drinking, no alcohol. And so he is pushing for people to stop drinking. And a lot of branches spring up about this because there are, Americans, even George Washington, big whiskey makers. I mean, we know about the Whiskey Rebellion. This is nothing new. This is kind of an American thing. And so they're trying to push so that alcohol does not embed itself so much in the American society. You've seen this picture before, the temperance movement. These are women and men who were trying to stop the abuse of alcohol. They saw women who could not feed their children because the husband would use all the money and go drink it away. And of course, this is my favorite picture of lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours. Just awesome. Charles G. Finney, not really going to focus on him, but I hope you enjoy his picture. Other than that, we're going to move on. Health and medicinal improvements. This is actually really big. We've talked about cholera. We talked about cholera last year, but we didn't talk about phrenology, and we also didn't talk about graham crackers, which are a delicious treat. So cholera, this is something that you know. It's a bacterial infection, typically by contaminated water. There are multiple times throughout history that cholera outbreaks have happened. What ends up happening is that if you end up vomiting or having diarrhea from cholera, you want to obviously replace your fluids. Unfortunately, a lot of people are replacing their fluids with more contaminated water, so you can see the problem. And they're actually trying to figure out why cholera is happening and what they can do to prevent it in the future. Just some pictures, scientific picture of cholera. Looks like a little bit of a rat. And then, of course, this is a cartoon from the time period in the 1800s. And, of course, the skeleton is just the, cholera skeleton, I guess. Phrenology. Some of you may have these in your home or like in your grandmother's basement or something, but they're these mannequin heads, and they do have these words on them. And what it's supposed to be is like if you're bumpy here or if there's a shallow dip in your head, then it's going to mean this or that. And they believe that they could tell how intelligent or non-intelligent you were based on the bumps in your head. Fortunately, there seems to be absolutely no science behind it, and there's no belief. So don't worry if you have a bumpy head or divots in your head or whatever. Nothing matters. Sylvester Graham, this is my favorite guy because he has everybody's favorite elementary school snack, the graham cracker. He actually calls for a diet heavier in fruits and vegetables instead of just like, venison, deer, and bread. He also is starting to call for coarsely ground flour, not the bleached white flour that becomes popular later on and becomes significant of I am wealthy because I can afford bleached white flour. It's actually the fact that whole wheat flour is better for you. And so you have the graham cracker, and you also have him to thank for making you eat your fruits and veggies. Well, and your parents. Educational reform. This is a big thing. Horace Mann travels around, finds out that not that many people are going to school. A lot of people in the West, there may not be a lot of schools to go to. In the South, it would had plantation owners. This is what we've talked about in the past of just how their schools are very different. Um, this is Horace Mann. I had to study him a lot. He's not that most exciting person in the world, but he is the one that actually starts pushing for more money and public schools. And he also lengthened the school year to 6 months. So just imagine that you only had to go to school for 6 months. That would be pretty nice. And he established normal schools, which meant that teachers actually now had to be trained. Um, and they couldn't just have graduated fifth grade and now they can teach you. They actually have to have a college education. And normally these normal schools maybe were only 1 or 2 years in length. They weren't, 4 years, no master's degree, nothing like that. And still focused on the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But he did improve the conditions of schools, how many people went, the length, and the actual training of teachers. They wanted people to be educated. If you look at this, the results of the improvement, obviously the United States has one of the highest literacy rates, much higher, a little bit higher in the north, a little lower in the south, probably has to do with the number of schools they actually had. This is a typical one-room schoolhouse with a potbelly stove in the middle that if you were lucky and you were a teacher's pet, you got to fill. The mentally ill and handicapped is another big issue. This is Dorothea Dix. She actually was a nurse and she helped improve the conditions in mental institutions. Mental institutions back in the day, meaning early 1800s, 1700s, if you had a mental illness, they would often put you in jail with common criminals and they would chain you up and you would be tied to chairs. They did not know how to deal with somebody with a mental disability or mental illness. So she realizes that we need to start treating people with mental illness like people and actually start treating them in a way that's going to help them. Moving on, this is the alphabet. You practice that, A, B, C, yeah, you get it. Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet. He's the one who helped bring sign language to the United States. So the American Sign Language, you can thank this guy. It's kind of like the Helen Keller story where she was blind and deaf and she couldn't hear anything. So they start using the sign language with her and she can totally communicate. Dr. Samuel Gridley Howe, he's the guy that you're going to thank for inventing Braille and developing the books for people who cannot see. And then we're going to go quickly through this. So you can see these handsome women right here. You have Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. I always say Cady, it's Katie. The big thing is if you go down to the bottom where it says, wrote the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, what that means, there was a Seneca Falls Convention. It was this big women's rights convention. And they rewrite the Constitution to include the word women. Other women that you're familiar with, Sojourner Truth. She was a big abolitionist. And Lucretia Mott, also very anti-slavery and temperance movement. This is a picture of Lucretia. Abolitionists. I'm going to stop here, actually.